All right. Good morning. Okay, so we'll jump right into it. So today I get to talk about what I think is a very fun and kind of engaging topic, not only because it's about innovation, which is a core part of my role and a core part of what I work on, but it's really also about agility and really transforming and changing our company and the way we actually do innovation and come to market. And so to jump right into it, my team and what we've been working on over the last year and what we'll talk about today really is about our journey to really change and transform our processes, not just from an innovation perspective, but also from an insights perspective, and kind of what we've done along the way to really do that. And I'm going to go very quickly through some of the content to hopefully have a little bit more time for questions at the end, just because this tends to raise a lot more questions than actually provide answers. But as I mentioned, this all really begins at the start of the journey. And really that was the realization that what we were doing as a company wasn't really working. We weren't really capturing growth and doing innovation how we really should be with our industry and the way the market was actually changing. And as a lot of speakers have mentioned, that change that was happening at that time is only accelerating. And we realized that if we didn't start to change and disrupt our model and really what we focus on and how we think, we weren't really going to be able to adapt and be successful as a company. And so with that said, this was really around focusing on transforming and changing a very time-intensive process. And all of these are examples of products actually that I've worked on when I left the MMR program to join AB. And all of these products are actually no longer in market today, which is a lot of fun. But that's the reality of the context is a lot of these products take a very long time to develop. In many cases, 18 to 24 months to take it from an initial idea, doing FEI, front-end exploration, trying to find out and create a concept against it, brew the product, actually create packaging, a brand, all of that stuff, and then actually get it to launch. It takes a very, very long time in the traditional sense and in the traditional model. And at the end of the day, this resulted in a lot of money, over $170 million, actually being spent on products ultimately that we pulled from market and determined not to actually be successful. And so we fell for a variety of reasons. And there's many out there in the world, but I would say three of the primary ones is we really didn't. By the time we actually figured out a solution, the consumer had already changed or started to change and move on. They also, in many cases, we really didn't understand the need deep enough or the opportunity deep enough to actually create a product against it that would be successful. And in many cases, we often thought through the lens of the business and not really through the lens of the consumer, which at the end of the day really is we need to be faster, we need to be deeper, and we really need to put our consumer people first at the end of the day. And so a lot of this is because we were really grounded in the historical innovation mindset, where, and I'm sure this is true of many companies, and not just innovation, but brand and many things that we actually work on, where methodologies are actually overly rigorous, very complex. It takes a lot of time to actually do them. We're focusing on projection in many cases, forecasting, trying to ensure consistency of the cost of flexibility, and focus is everything has to be validated. You need that yes/no answer. And that's really because at the end of the day, the priority is, and the mindset is, you have one shot to actually get it right because you're going to go big on what this actually is. And as part of this process, insights as a function or marketing research really is viewed as a barrier versus an enabler. We're slow. We're a step needed to get yes, no. We're stuck in the past with traditional methods. We get data. We don't really get answers. We don't really get guidance on what we actually need to do. And that's the reality of kind of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so as a company, we started to realize, and not just as a company, as really an insights function, that we needed to really transform how we were looking at innovation from that historical innovation approach, really to a future innovation approach. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is. But I think it's really important to note that this wasn't a journey that we actually went on alone. We partnered very heavily with our innovation team, actually transforming and doing co-presentations as the I team, really as a joint function, coming together to make sure that we were collaborating and actually starting to change the way our business operates. And so with that said, our future innovation approach really is about redefining what we do and how we think as a business, where methodologies are flexed to match a rigor with the level of risk. We're focusing really on optimizing, not delivering yes/no answers, creating consistency where it makes sense, but allowing for flexibility within the model, and really changing our focus to everything being able to be optimized and basically try to find out how can we move forward, what is the best way to actually proceed at the end of the day. And there's a lot of things that you need to do this, obviously, at the end of the day, and part of that is insights, part of it's a number of other things within the business. And there's changing the growth strategy of the business, there's changing process and structures within the business, there's changing people, capabilities to be able to support these types of things. And as some examples, Scrum, sprint cycles, that type of mentality, which if you've not heard about, in a second I'll give you some great books to read. Shifting growth strategy from having big bets to actually many small bets. And then really kind of balancing between what is done internally within the business and what you actually lean on some of external partners to do is a really important kind of element within this type of model. And as I mentioned, there's plenty of thought leaders within the space, Lean Startup, Scrum, Age of Agile. There's a million other books out there. I encourage you to read them, understand them. I'm not going to go into it today because MVP, all of the elements of this, really depend on your business model and really depend on kind of what fits best for you. Even us, we don't fully operate in one true form of any of these thought leaders. We've found kind of what works within our company and kind of use the principles, use the methodology to kind of adapt to what we do and how we operate. But at the end of the day, really at the center of this, I think that's really important is the mindset. And this mindset really is an insights mindset first and foremost, or how we should be operating as a team. And that's really because the first part of this mindset is around learning. It's around learning being a core essential part of the way you think and the way you operate. And we adopt this in a number of ways, but the real core of it is everything really is viewed as an experiment and an opportunity to learn, where the focus is on why versus whether or not something actually worked. And so a really classic example of this, that actually this product is and does still exist and is very rapidly growing today, is when we first approached actually working on Michelob Ultra Organic as an initial idea, an initial space that we were working on, it actually failed our traditional methods and our traditional standards. Basically, it was a do not proceed, don't go type of decision. And so we took a step back and we really started to reevaluate, you know what? Do we really have the right consumer target for this product? Are we really communicating it in the right way? And really, is the core benefit working, or is it just kind of the packaging around it that actually needs to change? And as we really dug in and started to look at why, we actually were able to transform the product into something that is in market, has been very successful, and is still continuing to actually grow today. But more than that, I think a second very important part of this mindset is the idea of being contextual in terms of the way you operate and kind of the way you actually learn. And this is about really understanding within chaos versus always to try to create an isolated vacuum in which to learn. And this is done in a number of ways. I would say first and foremost, and especially in our piloting process, at AB, we leverage really all of our available resources to actually develop and learn and build hypotheses actually for validation. So we're using social listening, we're using retailer feedback, we're talking to our field sales team, we're sending people out in market, not insights, people that are a little bit removed to actually go talk to consumers, learn, come back with what they're hearing, so we can help form hypotheses, which then you can actually test via more traditional methods if needed to actually validate. But it allows people to be out in the field, kind of learn within the actual chaos of the actual in market, basically find things that you can't actually predict or really account for to make sure that we are able to adapt and kind of get the right type of learning. And then the other big piece of this, and it's great that we're talking about AI, is really leveraging the power of connected data. I think as we've entered this journey and we've started to do a lot of work within this space, develop massive data sets, we're able to start to tap and really leverage that information in a responsible way to basically start to transform how we do analytics and modeling, to go from relative analysis to eventually on the top of the same data sets do normative analysis, eventually start to connect more data in, do predictive analytics, and then ultimately the future for us is doing more prescriptive analytics, actually being able to find opportunity before we actually have a concept that actually goes against that type of space. And then the third piece of this, I would say, is really the idea about being iterative, because you have to start somewhere, and when you start somewhere, it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to get it right the first time, but really, as you kind of learn from that mistake and learn from that opportunity, you're able to adapt very, very quickly to learn how to evolve. And so one part of this that I would say is very important is don't attempt to answer everything or perfect everything to the point that you're not able to move forward. Build on the collective knowledge set, build on what you're doing to actually evolve over time. And I think this is really important because we don't try to cram everything in massive studies and do everything at once. We actually take a very iterative approach to methodologies and the way we learn, where you may start and do a very small study, which we can turn around in a couple of days, understand the space or the potential of the space, do some additional work to then find how different executions, how different ways in to actually tap into the space actually impact a pill for a consumer. And then eventually you can actually do an additional study to actually find out what's the size relative to other opportunities in this space. But breaking parts and pieces of this up allows you to do each thing in a phase, in most cases 2 to 3 days for us, to kind of build that collective knowledge set rather than trying to cram everything into one study that basically in most cases may take 4 to 6 weeks to actually be able to complete it from start to end. And I think the key part of this is it really allows you to stay very connected to the development of the process, keep your partners very close as well as your consumers very close as you basically work together to actually evolve what you're working on. The fourth piece that I think is really important, and this is the one I think we all struggle with at times, is the idea of humility. And I think this comes down to really the heart of it is transparency, but it's about kind of learning what's most important and really acknowledging and being comfortable with what we don't know. I think for us, this really comes down to, one, making sure at the start of the projects, we're really defining the scope of learning to put the consumer and really people first. We don't define everything in terms of being kind of business objective defined. We actually define it in terms of the consumer problem, what we need to know, what we need to learn with consumers to really make sure that at every aspect, we're able to focus people in on what truly do you need to know within this, and what are those nice to know things that maybe we can cut out and not really actually focus on. And then the fifth piece, I think that's also very important and tied to this into this is really about being non-complacent. I think as an industry, really, we get very comfortable with perfecting a tool, perfecting a methodology, and basically sticking with the same methodology for a very long time, partly because it's very efficient and cost-effective to do so. But I think it's very important to always be looking ahead, trying to define, push the boundaries, and basically always ask yourself, really, what's next? And more importantly, how do we build upon kind of what we've done to continue to evolve, continue to iterate, to make sure we're moving forward. And within our piloting process, we've developed and done a number of things. We've adapted kind of the way we do in-market learning, where classically you may do intercepts, pre-purchase, consumer actually purchases the product, and then you're doing post-surveys to actually get feedback and understand kind of how did it resonate. Do you want to repeat this, buying this thing? But we learned very quickly that the setup, reporting, way too slow. The data isn't available to really make decisions in time. And actually the trier feedback was less impactful than what we actually expected within this type of model. And so we basically figured out a way to say, okay, let's take parts of this that work, use that pre-purchase type of survey information, and then maybe augment it with actually the in-store sampling that we're doing, do survey or collect feedback in type that moment, actually have live reporting available. So as we're sampling and maybe getting it in the hands of people that aren't necessarily purchasing it, but they're actually trying it in a different form, in a different way, we can actually start to collect feedback that way. And so we're slowly and constantly basically evolving how we learn within this process. I think the other one that is really interesting, and I won't go into a lot of detail about this, is we do and have shifted from always doing research in kind of central locations in the lab type environment to actually moving and shifting to what we call the consumer lab within some of our tour centers, actually at our breweries, where we actually have 2 million people flowing and kind of wanting to interact and be involved with our brands every single year, to actually shifting some of that liquid testing kind of within that model. But we're not necessarily satisfied with it. We believe it can be even better. Because today, basically, we're taking the traditional research approach, just replicating it in a different environment. And it still requires for us a lot of very active kind of data collection. And so the future and really how we're trying to push and evolve this program is use technology, use other advanced techniques. One, to start to gamify the process, make it engaging, make it fun for people to actually do. Actually use the power of observation, whether that is simply just observing people or actually starting to embed sensors into glassware, into flights, into other things to evolve kind of how you're collecting information, or use other behavioral techniques to actually start to make the process a little bit more impactful and start to understand and learn in a very, very different way. But finally, and I think the last and most important piece is really about having kind of a future focus, which all of these things really tie into. And for us, it's really kind of always questioning ourselves, what did we set out to do? So whether it be a project, whether it be a methodology we're developing, whether it be anything that we're actually doing, what were we trying to do? What was the goal of this thing? And what did we accomplish? But more importantly, kind of where are we going with this? What is next? What is the next step? To always cross-check. And in many cases, for us, especially within the realm of innovation, even if the product is a go, it's a very successful project, it is ready to scale, we're going to go ahead and start making it bigger. It's always about how do we make it better? How do we transform? How do we evolve that product to tweak, optimize it, make it more desirable for the consumer? And in cases where the product's okay, how do we optimize or can we optimize? Really is the question at the end of the day. Should this be a product maybe that does get killed? Can we optimize it in a way that makes it more appealing? And if so, let's go ahead and take that forward and maybe repilot it again to confirm that we were actually correct. And then in many cases, and I think this is the most important piece, in cases where the product is killed and you have failure, I think it's very important to always ask yourself, what can we do better next time? What did we learn from that failure to actually take forward and impact other products and other things that we actually develop? And I think it's really this mindset that has allowed us not only to transform our innovation process and be very successful, but actually start to transform the way we do and collect insights, which is very important. And I'll have a few keynotes on that in a minute. But I think the key most important thing is this mindset, the way we've changed kind of the way we operate, kind of what we're doing as a business, really allows us to take that model of 18-24 months of development and really go from a model that's lengthy and long and historical to one that is a future model where we can actually get things from idea to in market within around 50 to 100 days, which is incredibly fast considering that quite a bit of this is actually the time it takes to actually brew the beer. But it's not just me saying this, and then I'll play a quick video for you. This has really started to transform and inspire not just the insights function and not just the innovation function, but all of our marketing team through the lens of the work we do. And I think a great example of this really is our I-Week process that we do, where there's the part of the process where you have to get the product from concept and actually launch it into market. But before that, we actually have to go through the process of creating the ideas and developing. For us, that's called I-Week. It takes place in about 5 days. So for 1 week a year, we basically take everybody off site, put them all in a room together, immerse them in the world of the consumer, and actually within that method, overnight testing that's done in multiple rounds, we're actually able to optimize and entirely craft our pipeline for the entire year. So here's just a quick video of kind of what that looks like.
We're here in Red Hook in Brooklyn. We had to take a ferry to get here, so we're almost literally on an island away from the office, immersed in our strategy, but also, most importantly, our consumers' lives.
Very different from what we do. It's just good to be in a place outside the office, coming together as a big team, as a big company.
The chance to meet with people that you don't normally work with to solve a common problem has been a lot of fun. A lot of fresh perspective and enthusiasm to create.
I already know a lot of the craft people here, but meeting people who are on the Bud team or the Bud Light team, I've got new respect for the job everybody's got to do in the company, which is cool.
My team is the technical team, so I'm very happy to see the right mindset of all the people collaborating and building on each other's feedback to come with very strong and solid concepts in a few days.
We spent a day really rooting in the strategy and then getting inspired with what's happening outside of our walls.
In our normal lives, we start conversations with brewery capabilities or what are the things that we already have in the pipeline. But really, this is about consumer first.
It truly is an ideation phase. People aren't holding back ideas, and I love that. People are sharing everything, and it's refreshing.
From illustrators to concept writers, I was blown away.
Starts off with everybody expanding their ideas. You get a little filter on it, and then you start narrowing it down and building depth to the idea. You see how brands can start to take shape.
Overnight, we were able to test with 5,000 consumers in only about a 12-hour period, using technology in order to really move faster than we ever have before and put consumers at the center in a way that we never have before.
Seeing all the consumer results this morning, anything that didn't queue up or talk about flavor, the consumer said, hey, I want to know more about that. It's really going to help me position new beers and make sure we're really communicating that to the consumer.
I would tell you the amount of in-depth process that everybody went through was really exciting to see from a wholesaler, knowing how much work is going into these concepts, and the presentations were absolutely fantastic.
Innovation Week has been great. Some really wonderful takes that I would never have thought of. 12 wonderful ideas. I mean, all the presentations had some sparks of genius in them, with a few tweaks. Be huge hits for us and make my job easier.
Sometimes we think, there's no more ideas within beer. But I think this week has really identified some really great opportunities within beer. What that does, it just energizes the people on the brands, the people that associate with the brands. Folks leave this week with that energy and that positive feeling.
What the I team has done, the amount of people prepared and trained and supply working with these guys. I think the depth of the construction is amazing. I don't see it in much of my clients now.
We all have a goal of wanting to be relevant and wanting to drive future growth, but to actually see that in the context of an iWeek, it's pretty cool.
The consumer deserves it, that we bring new beers that will enhance their experience.
One word to describe your experience for this iWeek, what would it be?
Amazing.
Thank you very much.
It's incredible to see how many new ideas, even when we live and breathe innovation, how teams are able to continue pushing the envelope. That really gives me confidence that we can lead future growth.
All right. So with this, and I hope it kind of came through from the video, that really a lot of this is not only allowed us to change our innovation process, it's really allowing us to change the role of insights within our business to become and basically move from being a support function, really to being a partner to kind of co-pilot and basically co-lead the process. And through this, we're basically able to transform ourselves from a team that's viewed as slow to really one that's able to turn around and get quick learning. A team that's able to move from kind of a yes-no decision and kind of a gatekeeper, really to one that's viewed as a step to actually learn with consumers and be involved with that process. One that's moving from traditional methods really to pushing the boundaries of research and how to involve consumers. And then one that's kind of moving from a data or a fact provider to one that is really moving towards a mode of understanding and a mode of what do we do next, which is very important. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to kind of call out that our journey and really the mindset that we fostered with this, to kind of sum it up, really has a number of things that not only kind of has positive impact for us, but can have positive impact for you. And I would say to start that, really the true power of the shift in this mindset comes from leveraging all of those elements together or in conjunction with each other. It's not just about moving fast. It's not just about being contextual. It's not just about kind of any individual one of them, but really operating them all together allows you to kind of achieve agility and be more humble and more nimble and kind of flexible in the approach. And I would say the role of this mindset really is about changing how we think to better stay connected and really involve our consumers and partners along the journey. It's not just about kind of changing what we do. It's changing about how do we become more collaborative and participate with and involve people more and more. And the other key fact that kind of taps into that is really changing the role of insights is about more than changing what we do. It's about requiring changing how an organization thinks about risk and failure. Which I think is important to call out. So to do this and really kind of accomplish this within your business, I think it's very important to kind of understand that you do need partners, you do need people along with you with you in the journey to actually be able to achieve the change you want to see. And first and foremost, actually changing things really does start with changing the mindset. You have to think differently before you actually can do or behave differently, which is very important to kind of call out. I think it's a very important and necessary step to really be able to achieve change, and in our case, growth within the business. And last, and I think most importantly, it is a journey. This is a journey that we basically started over 2 years ago. It's a journey that we're continuing to stay on. And over the next 5 years, I'm sure we're going to continue to change. And so don't think that this is going to happen overnight. That's going to be something you can go back, say, here's a slide, here's a book, go read it, and then come back to me the next day, and we're going to go ahead and operate in this way. It's something you do have to slowly build, slowly evolve, and slowly change. For us, it has started with our innovation and insights team, but it now is starting to transform kind of the rest of the company, and it's going to be a continuous journey as we work to evolve. And with that said, thank you for listening to me. Any questions? Yes.
So, to the point you were making about the organization has to be comfortable with risk and failure, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. How were you able to get your business partners like marketing or promotions on board with this?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, everything starts with kind of a catalyst. For us, really, that was the realization that what we were doing and the way we were operating really wasn't successful, and we had to do something because if we didn't change, things would continue to move in the direction that they were moving, and we wouldn't really see the growth and the opportunity that we wanted to. So for us, that being kind of the context and the environment in which we were operating, it was very easy to go to our innovation partners to say, hey, guys, what we're doing isn't working. Let's work together. Let's rethink kind of what we're doing, kind of what's going on here, and see how we can partner together to actually evolve and start to change things. Yes.
Are you far enough along yet where you can tell if this has made an impact on your success and market? Are you launching more successful new products, and are they doing well?
Yeah, I would say we're now actually we're in the second class, so basically the second year of pilots. A lot of them are still in development and getting ready to go. One actually is launching in Atlanta on Friday. But with that said, yes, I would say we are far enough along. And there's a number of different metrics we look at. I would say first and foremost, our rate of innovation, so the amount of innovation within our industry definitely has evolved. We've gone from 10% as a share of innovation now to over 50% in terms of volume. So it definitely is making an impact in terms of all the work and the push and the drive we've been doing. And beyond that, I would say, yes, we're measuring the success or a pilot product versus kind of a traditional big bet pilot. It's still maybe a little bit too early. I would say so far the things that we have decided to scale are scaling and operating correctly and in the right way. But it's probably going to be a year or two once those products make it nationally before we will actually truly know. Yes.
I love the shout out for the Eric Reese book. It's absolutely important. Talk a little bit about just validated learning and the idea that we shouldn't just gauge an experiment by its end result, but just the fundamental mechanics of what happened and why. Did you see your organization shift from this purely outcome-based result to let's think about what we learned? And if so, how long did it take for that to change?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely something that just doesn't happen. It really do have to force it. I think it was a very iterative thing to basically always shift from wanting to see the financial results or data points or sales metrics, basically actually to starting to force in consumer metrics and consumer targets and consumer information into the process. And I think the more you started to prime people with that and show the value of what that uncovers, and actually, in our case, it's showcasing how adding that actually changes the story and gives you a wider view of what's actually and truly going on as you basically surround and create context and makes the data and the information kind of more understandable, more impactful. So it was something that we basically just had to continuously do, continuously push. And as you do that and really show, it's about showing people the power of what that does and the value of it. As you do that, more people start to adopt it, and you're able to successfully ensure that the rest of the organization starts to go through that same type of thought process and thinking. Cool.